Good morning or good afternoon, whenever you're listening to this video. Let me mute my song real quick, but I wanted to get on like I promised I would and answer some of your questions that you all sent me, which I thought were really incredible. I think I've got maybe like 100 questions, so you guys were really on it. So with that being said, first and foremost, I wanted to start with this is not financial advice in any way. This is not investment advice in any way. This is truly my experience, letting you know what that is and what I would do, what I have done, what I plan to do, what I will do, and what I am doing. So take it with a grain of salt if you like, or take it to heart and figure out what it is that you want to do with your investment portfolio in terms of building one. So anywho, I am going to look up these questions really quickly for you. I highlighted some of them. Of course, I can't go through all of them, so I put them in categories. It seems like the majority of the questions came in about 5 high-level categories: property management, money management, tax and business structure, types of property, and financing and pricing. So the first question I'm going to jump into is how to screen and select the right tenants to avoid the horror stories. Should I hire a property manager? Now, it is up to everybody themselves to decide whether a property manager is for them. And you really need to know your numbers. At the end of the day, cash is king, and the numbers dictate what you do, what you invest in, what you decide to invest in terms of the property management resources. So I can't say that for you just right off the bat. I would need to know your numbers. But in knowing your numbers, you should know how much profit you're going to be bringing in every month and how much you're willing to give away to a property manager. You know, property managers can range depending on the services you're getting from them and depending on the portfolio that you have. So you would need to make sure that you speak to property managers just like you would a tenant to figure out if, one, they're a good fit for you. Do they provide this level of service that you like? All property managers are not made equal. So keep that in mind. So the same way you would screen for a tenant is the same way you would screen for a property manager. I personally do our property management in-house. It's not me in particular. My husband manages it all. But we were able to retire him off of real estate investments, so he's picked that up. But he doesn't plan to do it forever. We plan to put out a property management company within the near future so that he can move away from that, but he'll oversee it and make sure he has people in place to take care of it. But benefits of a property manager are, being able, depending what you hire them to do, being able to rely on them to manage the finances, manage the books, or so much as dealing with the repairs, making sure that they can go in and get them done. But property managers have fees, and you have to understand what those fees are. And it's not like I'm going to pay you 10% of the rents that come in and you're going to cover everything. It doesn't work like that. So you make sure you understand what property management is, what it costs, and can you afford it based on the profit that you're bringing in and the size of your portfolio. So someone said also, do you need to have a certain amount of property before you decide to proceed with a property manager? Now, that's your decision. You need to look at your numbers. The numbers dictate everything. Know your numbers. If you've been in the 2020 MAT class, I talk about knowing your numbers, and that is probably the most significant thing to know. Whether you have property or not, you should know your numbers even for your personal finances, because that dictates what you can and can't do, what you should or shouldn't do, how much flexibility that you have. So I hope that helps you in answering that question. The other question that I got in the property management category that I want to answer today is, what if the tenant causes damage to my property? Now, at the end of the day, if you are doing a proper screening process, hopefully that won't happen to you. But even with the tightest screening process, sometimes, people are con artists and they can give you the answers that you want to hear, and they can show you that they're great on paper, and things might not work out. But if you're doing a really tight screening process, you typically won't have that issue per se, but it's not a guarantee, like I said. But nonetheless, if a tenant damages property, this is why you ask for first month's rent, last month's rent, and security deposit. That's your saving grace, because say there wasn't a moratorium on evictions right now, you would have those 2 months, because the first month goes to the first month they move in, but you would have last month rent and security deposit to help protect you for damages that occur, for an eviction that you might need to do to cover payment that might not have been received. So that would be my answer to that, is make sure you protect yourself with collecting your first month, your last month, and your security deposit. Now, here's what people do when they don't know their numbers. They start compromising. They don't screen people effectively because they want to hurry up and get someone into the property because they want to get the cash flow going. But if you have your numbers right, you know you should give yourself some flexibility in there, as well as what you do with the profits. You should be building a reserve so that you can carry the load if something goes bad. So I hope that helps you for those that had that question. And some people ask that question in a number of different ways. So hopefully this answers it for all of you as much as possible. When it comes to the money management questions, how much profit should you make? Now, again, this determines on the property you're going for, the size of the property, and what your particular goals are and what you understand about properties. So I can't tell you what the perfect amount is. If you're going for a smaller multifamily, such as a 3 or 4 family, I like to make sure that if it's a 3 family, that one of those units is covering typically all of the expenses. That way, if I have a vacancy, that, hey, it doesn't really affect me that bad because I've got the most important things covered already, and I can float that until I get a tenant into that apartment. Same thing with the 4 family. It all depends on what you're bringing in for rents for that 4 family. Now, I typically stay clear of the 1-bedroom apartments and the studios because they don't bring you in as much money. But the 2 bedrooms and the 3 bedrooms and the 4 bedrooms, those bring you in, of course. The bigger the apartment and the more bedrooms that it has, the more you're able to charge for the rent. So keep that in mind. And again, my class Property Profits will be going over this so that people know exactly how to assess a property. But the next question that is related to how much profit is, how do I assess a smart real estate investment? Now, I'm going to share my screen, and this is actually going to be taught in the Property Profits class. And I'm just going to share it with you right now. So this tool is a tool I created, and it has the basic information about how to assess a property. And I literally use this for every property that I assess or my husband assesses to determine if it's the right fit for us. Is it bringing the right amount of money in? So I like to say this is a tool that helps us all eat up in this house. So you can see the kitchen behind me. We like to keep it stocked with food. Well, your profit really is what you're eating, essentially, depending what you're doing with it. So this is my Empire Assessment Tool, EAT. This is going to help us eat and would help you eat in the class because you'd get this as well. So essentially, looking at the property that I was assessing here was called 888 Empire Way. That was the address, not in real life, but for fake. So, but it actually mirrors a property we actually were looking at. So when I typically look at properties, I like to look at what the property is bringing in today and what it could potentially bring in. What's the ceiling that it can bring in? A lot of the properties that I buy are typically renting for under market value. That means that there's flexibility to increase the rents so you can make more profit. But you've got to know what you're going into a property with and what the property profit is going to be on day one, because you got to make sure you can cover everything and you're making a profit. In addition, you want to know where the future of this property is. How much profit potential does it have? And that's important because some deals look way more lucrative than others in their future than they do today. And that's why you want to look at both of those circumstances to understand what can you grow this property to. The maximum property profit is the goal. So in this example, this was a 4 family. Say it was all 2 bedrooms. We are stating that we'd be able to get max of 1050. Or let's say let's say this property is already at the max capacity. So 4 units, 2 bedroom apiece in Springfield, Massachusetts, they're making 1050. Depending where you live, we have people all over the country looking at this video. Depending what your market is will dictate what the profits will be and what the rents will be. And in the class, we talk about how to figure out what those markets can ask for. So needless to say, total gross rent is going to be $4,200 for the month, and it's going to be $50,000 for the year for this 1 4 family. So then, if you go down, the particular sheet that I use, it has expenses. Now, we have 2 types of expenses here, and there's the expenses that are really the hard expenses. These are the things that are coming, bottom line. They're coming, you know they're coming, they happen every month. Now, depending on the property that you buy will determine how many of these hard expenses that you have. For example, you're definitely gonna have a mortgage unless you pay cash. If you pay cash, then you eliminate the mortgage there. But if you're not paying cash, you need to figure out what the mortgage would be in advance, and there's ways to do that. Then if there's additional type of debt that you take out for this property, I won't go into detail, but that's why that category is there. Then we have operational expenses. Those are your things like your taxes, your insurance, your electric. If you're covering electric for an apartment, some buildings, you might do that. It all depends how the layout is and what you're buying into, but that's why this is here. In addition, the common spaces. Typically, if there's a landlord meter in the property, you're responsible to pay that bill to light the common spaces. And again, it all depends on the property that you're buying. Heat, if you're responsible, again, your heat might be included if it's a building, it might not be. Maybe there's a second and third unit together. Whatever the case may be, categories here for you to use it if it applies to you. Water and sewer, we're responsible for that in Springfield, Massachusetts. There are ways you could potentially bill back your tenants if you set it up properly, but a lot of people don't necessarily do that. So typically it's you paying this, which is why you got to set your rents properly, because you've got fixed bills coming in. And then trash, you've got to make sure that the trash is removed. And when you're buying commercial properties, you're responsible to contract your own relationship with a trash company in Springfield, Massachusetts. So then there's a category for management fees. So somebody had asked, should I hire a property manager? That is your choice. And here it's on my sheet in case I decide to pivot over and to move my property over to a property manager and not create our own. But nonetheless, it's there and it can be modified based on the percentage. And I have some other, codes and equations that help auto calculate some of these things for me. So essentially, once you add those up, those are typically the standard, the fix. This is what your total debt / operation expenses will be. It'll be $1,997.33. And for the year, that would bring in about $23,967.98. Or not bring in, these would be your total expenses for the year. When you take what your projected income was, and you subtract it from your total debt and operation expenses, this gives you your total income before reserve expense. So it's like your profit, but it's not necessarily your exact profit just yet. But this is kind of the meat on the bones. I always like looking at this number. My husband always likes looking at, where's his number? He always likes looking at this number. I like them both, but I like to know how much meat's on the bone. And then when we start taking some meat off the bone, okay, what's left? I want to know both. So this lets you know that this could potentially at the high end bring in about $2,200 a month in terms of profit. But there are some other expenses, and there were some questions, and I won't go too much into this, but there's some expenses that you can reserve for. So even though $2,200 comes in a month, you want to reserve for some expected expenses you are going to have. It might not be this month, it might not be next month, it could be 6 months down the road. But there's things like maintenance allocation. There will be maintenance repairs you have to do. They don't happen necessarily all the time, but you want to reserve for those. Or your capital improvements. These are big things, your roofs, your siding. You might be putting those things aside for the future. And you got to understand the life term of the property you're buying and what's expiring when, like how much life you got left in the roof, and what have you. And then vacancy and collection reserve. So again, you talked about in your questions, well, what happens if you don't have a tenant? How do I make sure that I don't have a financial catastrophe? Well, here's another area where people are preparing in advance. It's your vacancy and collection reserves. And there's calculations behind how much you reserve, age of property, all that good stuff. And we're not going to get into that here. But I just wanted to show you this. So after you take out the reserves, this is your financial planning. This is your managing money properly. You take out $504 a month for this particular example, and then you have $2,500 a month that's left. Total expenses is $2,500, including that. What you have left after you take the $2,202.67 and you add in, hold on, that's not adding right. Or maybe it is. Oh yeah, that is adding right, sorry. Then that's $2,501.33 you have left for expenses, but the net income, the net profit of what you have left that you're going to be able to put in your pocket if that's what you so choose to do, then you're gonna have $1,698 left. And as you can see, what I like to see is I like to make sure that that number is bigger. Where is than this number? So the mortgage is 11, you add in the taxes, that's 16, 17, 18, it's approximately 18. So your net income is covering that. And when you include these in here, you're well beyond. So anyways, I hope this gives you an example and a breakdown as to how things typically work. So you could go with one vacancy fully $1,000, a 1050, and still be able to cover all your expenses and make profit. And then if you had a second unit that went vacant coincidentally at the same time, if you held your reserves for that particular month, you could go without two properties, without two incomes coming in from your rentals. But anyways, that gets really complicated and I don't want to confuse anybody. So I hope that makes sense. So back to the other questions that I wanted to answer for you all. So when it comes to taxes and business structure, somebody said, if I'm purchasing a multifamily, should I be creating a business to operate it under, or can I just run it on my own, not under an official business if I won't be living in it? Now, this is your choice. I can't tell you what to do. I've done both. Either or works, but you should really speak to your tax accountant and determine what is the best method for you, especially on your wealth journey. So types of property, if willing to put down 20% or even 30% down, why not invest in something bigger than a 4-family home? And should I live in my first home along with my tenants? So first question first, if you're gonna have to put 20 or 30% down, why not go for something bigger than a 4-family home? Why not? That's your decision. You, by all means, can do that. There's nothing stopping you. And that might be your preferred method in jumping in or in expanding your portfolio. No one's stopping you, not telling you you should or you shouldn't do that. It's definitely an option. And I've done that as well. And then should I live in my first home along with my tenants? I've done it. I've bounced between the multifamilies that I've lived in, and now I live in a single family. So that preference really is yours. What I say to people that don't have a house yet, I highly recommend that you get a multifamily first, because you'll be able to put the least amount of money down in order to get it. And I had done a video a while back, you may or may not have seen it, where I talked about being able to go from a 4-family to a 3 to a 2 to a 1. And then you have 10 doors by the time you work that cycle. And then understanding your financing really will let you know how fast you can move between those properties. Some places say you only need to stay in it a year and then you can go get another loan. And other places say you might have to stay for 3. All depends on the product that you pick for your financing. But whatever you choose, you got to choose what's right for your path. And what I like in my path is the most profit. So last question. Somebody asked, do you think it's a good time to buy, or is this the peak? I am not a forecaster of the future, but what I can say is people have been asking this question ever since ever. They asked it in before the market collapsed in 2007 through 9-ish. It kept rising, and then there was a bubble, and then it came down, and then it started going back up, and here we are in 2020. Could it crash? Absolutely, it could crash. But that's why you have to know your numbers, because no matter what the market does, if your numbers were actually solid from the beginning, you'll never have a problem in covering your mortgage and your expenses. So again, nobody is a forecaster or a fortune teller. For instance, New York prices have been going up for decades. Same thing like California, up, and everybody keeps saying it's gonna bust, it's gonna bust, it's gonna bust, it's gonna bust. They have yet to bust, and if they do, I'm not a fortune teller, so I can't tell you if it's going to bust, but I can tell you, know your numbers. Your numbers won't bust if you know them properly. So I hope this was helpful to you. I think there was one last thing that I needed to answer. Oh yes, here's the last question that I wanted to answer for you all. And this was under financing and pricing. So with all the products that the banks, credit unions, and mortgage companies offer, being able to narrow down the product that is best for me now and in the long run is what I'm finding challenging. So this particular person points a very good question out. But I just want to say that that person is really advanced in understanding that they have multiple options when it comes to financing. So a golden nugget for you is, and a lot of people don't know this, you have options when you get to choose your bank. You can switch banks in the middle of your closing of your house if you find a better product somewhere else, or a bank isn't moving fast enough for you, or there might be a myriad of reasons. But the bottom line is you have options. So make sure that you're exercising your options and you're value shopping in advance. What a lot of people do is they want a house. They find a house and then they're rushing trying to find financing, and they don't necessarily get the best deal with financing. All banks are not created equal. They don't move at the same speed, and they don't offer the same rates or the same perks. So make sure that you do some due diligence. So that's a major nugget for you. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this, and I'm glad we got this out the way before the kids woke up, because school is back in session. I got college students, I got high school students, and elementary students, and the high schooler is starting class today at 7:35. So thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for so much for participating on this Zoom, and I appreciate you tremendously, and I can't wait to see what you're going to do. And I hope you did see yesterday's video that I did send you. If you're on my email list, if you didn't get it, by all means, email me, jasminenailerenterprise@gmail.com. In addition, follow me on Facebook, follow me on Instagram, and follow me on YouTube, Jasmine Naylor Enterprise, for all of those particular platforms. So I hope you will wake up today and you will crack that code. Those who got the email yesterday know exactly what I'm talking about. All right, have a great day. Stay blessed.